So for the third time, welcome to the webinar today. Hi, I'm Dale Franks. We're going to be talking about building an application. This is going to be an unusual one. We're going to do something a little bit different over the next couple of weeks. We're actually going to just start from scratch and build an application implementing all of the best practices that I can think of as we begin to build an application. It's going to take us a while to build this application, largely because I'm going to be talking our way through it. But over the next couple of weeks, we're going to start with a blank slate. And by the time we're done, we're going to have a fully functioning, fully configured application. You know, a lot of times when I do these webinars, there's a lot of things I skip. I have a specific subject. I kind of try to concentrate on that subject and throw away a lot of the extraneous stuff. This time we're going to do all of the extraneous stuff, and that includes formatting buttons and colors and other considerations like that. So we are going to be taking a deep dive, and this is probably going to take us about today and the next 2 weeks. So this is probably going to take about 3 weeks to completely cover as we go through each of the bits that we have to do, because there are special things we have to do on the form and on the process timeline, our email template, and getting that all set up correctly. We are going to be building an application that does multiple types of requests. And so we're going to build a form that enables us to submit different types of requests. And with that submission, we will be able to track similar types of requests, even though the specifics are different. And what that's going to mean is that based on what it is that we're doing on the form, we're going to see different controls on the form. Different sections will appear and disappear at various times. Our process timeline is going to be a little more complicated because we are going to have to ensure that different activities occur for different requests. Some activities might be skipped in some cases, while in other cases they won't be. We're also going to be implementing milestones and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff to cover, which we'll be covering over the next couple of weeks. So let us begin with our blank slate. I will share my screen. And there we go. We will start. Let me move this out of the way. I don't actually even need that open. I can close that. So here we are. We have a blank slate. We are inside a folder, inside the training folder, which is where we usually work for our webinars, and we are going to start building our application from scratch. Now, what I am not going to do, and in fact, let me go ahead and for the moment, let me just get rid of the content list. So here we are. Here's our blank slate, and I'm going to create my new application. The way I'm going to create my new application is the way that you should probably largely be creating applications yourself, because it makes your life a lot easier. When I create a new application, I start from a template. Because in my templates, I have an application stub built for any new application that I want to create. It already has my process timeline. It already has my form. All I have to do is type in the name and then click on application. And it's going to take my application out of my template library, and it's going to transfer it to wherever I am on the content list, which in this case is the training folder. So I'm going to call this, I'm not going to type out advanced design concepts because it would be painful for you to try to watch me type, talk, and stand at the same time. So I'm just going to call this ADC, and I'm going to click on application. And it's going to give me a warning here that says, are you sure you want to do this? Yes, I am sure. So I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to create my application stub for me. So let's take a look at what is included in the application stub. I've got two folders, business rules and knowledge views. So these subfolders currently are empty. There's nothing in them. There's nothing in my template. This is an exact copy of what I have in the template library. I have an email template, a form, and a process timeline, all of which have some configurations on them, which we'll look at in a couple of seconds. just so that we can see where this is coming from, if I reopen the content list, inside my template library folder, and I've got my system folders hidden. So let me toggle them back so I can see all of these folders who have names in square brackets. And here's my template library folder. If I go into that, this is the application stub that I've created. These are the objects we just looked at. They're the exact same objects. The only difference in the template objects and the objects that I created for my application is that when I created the application and I gave it that name, ADC, it appended that name to all of these three objects, the email template, the form, and the process timeline. Other than that, it doesn't make any changes to the template. It just takes whatever the template is and pulls it over. Now, I have this template specifically created to make the creation of new applications easier. Gives me all of the basic objects. They're already configured. They're already linked to each other, as we'll see in a moment. So this resides inside the template library folder. Any folder that resides inside this template library folder is a template, and you can use it to create new applications. So if we move back down here to training, and I have my folder, which by the way is called ADC because that's the name of the application that I created inside this training folder. So it is called ADC, and notice that ADC has now been added to the names of the email template, the form, and the process timeline. So if we open up just the form and timeline just to check to see how they're connected, and if I go to open up the form and I go to the options tab, I can see that I've already got the automatically start this process property already configured, as is the timelines associated with form property. I've also got an instantiated form name that, while still generic, does provide the request number, the form submitter, and the submission date. Now, I may still want to go in and change this. In fact, I am going to want to go in and change this eventually as I add some new fields, because what we're going to be building is a form that does multiple types of requests. And based on the type of request, it's going to change the way our form looks. It's going to change the way our process works. And well, it's going to change the way our form works too, ultimately. But I'm probably going to want to add some other information here. Certainly the type of request I'm going to want to add here, but for now we are good. We have a properly configured instantiated form name, which is not just the generic one that Process Director provides, which has information, though not particularly useful information. Now we've got something useful, and it'll be more useful and more unique still whenever we create some of the fields on the form that we need to change our instantiated form name. But okay, great. We've got our form, our process timeline. Let's quickly go back and check our process timeline. Once again, we'll go into the options section there. And as you can see, I've got my form already supplied for the form for timeline. I've got my default email template already supplied, and I've even got some activities that are already just pre-configured for me. We'll come back and talk about these activities and these pre-configurations a little bit later, but at least in our form, our process timeline, and our email template are all hooked together. There's nothing really that we have to do on the email template itself. It is an email template, and it does have the regular normal email template stuff. We're probably going to make some changes here and clean this up a little bit, but we've got all of our basic objects. This really does save you a lot of time being able to use the template, because with the template, there's just a lot of initial work that I no longer have to do. One of the tedious things about creating an application is having to create the same objects over and over and then link them and do all of the other things. And it may only take, 5 or 10 minutes to do all of this. And yet it's still tedious. I don't really have to do any of that work. And in fact, a lot of the configuration work that I would do has already been done for me. Our decision at this point, of course, is what am I going to work on first? There's no right or wrong answer to this question. Although, personally, I generally always start off with the form to actually do my detail work on what the application is going to be. And the reason that I do that is because the form is where all of the data is saved. And for the most part, if I have to do some special configuration on the timeline, it's generally going to be based on some condition from a form field somewhere. And if I don't have the form fields, I can't really do some of the timeline stuff I'm going to want to do. That can also be true for the form, where I might, have different parts of the form that display based on where I am in the timeline. And so I can't make those configurations if the activities that I'm going to need for conditions don't exist. So there is a lot of interoperability between forms and process timelines. I find it's quicker to start with the form because I think that's where the majority of my conditions tend to come from. And it tends to be a much rarer use case for me to change things on the form based on what I'm doing in the timeline. So we are going to start with the form. And we're going to start on the Properties tab because, again, this is a template. And the nice thing about a template is that I can pre-configure a lot of stuff in the template so that I no longer have to worry about it on the form. For example, up at the very top of the Properties section, the form fields are enabled only when do I want my form fields enabled? Well, by default, I want them enabled when new form instance equals yes. So when I have a new form, I am going to want to see all of the form fields that I, as an end user, use to create my request. And I'm going to want to be able to edit those fields and fill them out and then submit the form. Once I've done that, I no longer want my form fields all enabled. I do want to control when and where users can add data to my form. I generally, this is not universal, and I think you'll find over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be talking about a lot of generalizations that are not applicable in specific cases, but that are sort of generally true, even if they're not specifically true in every case. In general, I don't want people to go back in and change the initial request. In general, I don't want that editable. Now, we're going to make it editable at some point, but we're also going to make whoever edits a form accountable for editing it. But in general, I want my initial requester to be able to edit the form, at least those portions of the form that I'm going to allow them to see. And past that point, I'm going to have specific sections of the form editable. One of the nice things about Process Director when it comes to enabling scenarios is that if there is a conflict between whether the form is editable and whether an object is editable, if there is a conflict, that conflict gets resolved at the lowest level. So I can disable the entire form, which is essentially what I'm doing here. I'm disabling the entire form. So everything at the form level is getting disabled. But because if there's a conflict between this and another visibility condition, where I actually want a field or a section, in our case, to be editable, then the object at the lowest level wins. So the form is the top level object. Below that are containers like sections or embedded section controls, or I guess array controls are technically a kind of section. Those are at the next lower level. And then below the level of container controls are the actual individual field controls, text boxes, checkboxes, drop downs, and what have you. So I've really got 3 levels on a form at which I can apply visibility and enabling scenarios. And as far as visibility, or as far as enabling scenarios go, I can disable the entire form. And then, because conflicts at the lowest level win, I can enable individual sections, or even, if I wanted, individual controls to be enabled, so that those controls would be editable, even though the rest of the form would not be editable. Now, obviously, I have to do the appropriate testing to ensure that the controls that I want to be edited are edited at the appropriate time. But in general, that's not that huge of a burden. And so, best practice, let's just make the whole form not editable. Another best practice is, how do I want this form handled once the process is over? So we have this entire form is read-only process. I have this set to a condition. So whenever my timeline status reaches complete, so when this timeline is done, I no longer want anyone to be able to edit this form. I want to lock the form in the state it was whenever the process was completed. I want to be able to maintain an accurate historical record. Now, in a well-managed system, no one is going to be going in and making changes after the fact to a request, but there are always going to be people who have the ability to go back and see the history. And if the form is editable at that point, there is the possibility that someone, perhaps a malicious actor, could open up a form and make changes to it, and our historical data would be changed. Now, if you have the auditing component on, you'll know, I mean, it will be possible to go back and see when the form was last edited, to see who made the edits in your audit logs. So it is possible to track it down were it to happen, but the best solution is to ensure that it simply doesn't happen. So I am going to set the form to read only as soon as my timeline completes. Once the timeline is complete, this form is no longer editable. It's not perfect, obviously. Anybody who has access to the form definition itself, which should be a very small number of people, could technically open up the form definition. They could just disable this particular condition and remake the form editable. I mean, that's always possible, but presumably the people who would have access to the content list and who have permissions on a production system to see these objects would be a fairly small number of people. So I'm going to set these properties as well. There's another property that I always set, and I do occasionally get pushback from some of you whenever I talk about this property. It's the show disabled fields as text. In general, I want to show disabled fields as text, and I do so for a couple of reasons. If I have this turned off, and I've got a couple of form fields here that are already disabled, so we can actually go ahead and take a look at them and see them when we open up our form. As soon as our form deigns to open, at least we'll be able to see them. At the very top of the form, I have a couple of form fields, the request number, the form submitter, and the form submission date, that are all disabled. And if you just show disabled fields, a couple of things happen. First of all, the fields actually print on the form. Second, the fields then show up as disabled. But the fact that they're disabled doesn't mean they're not form fields. And they also use the memory that are required to treat them as if they were form fields, even though they're disabled. Another thing I don't like is that, and this is sort of the HTML standard, and we could go in and make some changes to how this works, but in general, by default, they show up with gray backgrounds and then sort of darker gray text. This is an old HTML artifact when nobody thought much about accessibility. And so therefore, gray on gray was acceptable. I think today, for accessibility purposes, this is not a great idea. because it doesn't meet the contrast between the foreground text and the background color. The accessibility requirements require a 4.5:1 contrast ratio. That doesn't provide it. So there's a couple of reasons that this is generally something I don't like. So if I set show disabled fields as text, I get something different. First of all, those controls don't even print on the form. What prints is the value, and it prints as just actual text. So this is all HTML text now. There's nothing I can do on the front end to fix this. I can't edit it. It's just text, and therefore it uses a lot less memory. I don't have to treat them as fields. It's just text that gets generated on the server side whenever the form is created. So it takes up a lot less memory. Plus, it shows up as text. So assuming that my text and background colors on the form itself are properly contrasting, black over white is as high a contrast ratio as you can get. So therefore, this meets accessibility requirements and everything else. So that's why I have that property set. The nice thing is it's set in the template. So I don't have to go every time I create a form and redo all of these properties. These properties are already set for me. And so I'm a very happy camper. So let's take a look at the form and see what has already been built on the form. The nice thing about templates is that if I have a standard look and feel for a form, it already gets imposed by the template because I create it in the template with all of the appropriate objects that I'm going to need for a form. In our case, we have the standard dark blue and steel blue BP Logix colors, which I want to implement. In this case, I've implemented the dark blue because it provides a greater contrast ratio between my white foreground text and this nice color here that I have in the background. But I've got a space here where I can now type in my form title, whatever I want to call it. I've already got a logo built into the form. It's uploaded into the content list, so I can just link that image. So this is my look and feel portion of the form. I have implemented a standard look and feel. So every form that I create off of this template obviously will look exactly like this. The reason that I'm doing this is to provide a consistent look and feel across all of my applications to my end users. So every time they open up a form, they see a familiar interface. I have seen in the past, customers who don't have a unified form interface, every time somebody opens up a form, it looks completely different. This is common in organizations that have multiple implementers, many of whom don't actually work with each other. Some organizations will have, one implementer who does sort of HR personnel kind of stuff, another who will do operational stuff. They don't really talk to each other, and they all have their own ideas about what the design concept should be. So for the end user, it creates a more confusing experience because when I open up a form, I never know exactly what it's going to look like and whether, especially if there's no organizational mandate for some sort of standard form convention for how your forms should look. With a template, you just obviate that problem. Everybody creates new applications off a template. This also enables you to do some things that are very important that you want to see on every form, or that you should see on every form by recommendation. At the very top, I have this embedded section. And this embedded section contains labels. Well, it's actually text, and this will eventually be text, but two system variable controls. They just happen to be labeled. There are a couple of different ways of doing this when you want to use system variables at the top. I generally tend to put them inside a embedded section like this so that I can show and hide this embedded section. Now, my original template didn't have this. I just added it this morning. So I actually do need, oh, wait, no, it copied over from my other form. Ah, that is cool. I know that we had done something to make this happen, and it did happen. I already have my enabling properties written over here where this is hidden when a new form instance equals yes. So great, that's what I want. I don't want this to be shown. That's why it's in an embedded section. I don't want it to be shown when the form first opens as a new form instance. I thought I was going to have to configure this, but when I copied it off the other form that I had and pasted it in this morning, it copied in my conditions. So this is great. I want this to show while the process is running. In fact, this might not even be a great way of doing this. Maybe I don't want this field hidden when a new form instance equals yes. Maybe I want this field. I've got field is hidden when. I think I want to change this. I think I want to set this to field is visible when. And I want to change new form instance. As I think about it, that's not a great condition because I only need this section of the form. Well, before we do this, let's talk about why this is here. I only need this while the process is running, but I do kind of need this while the process is running. I need to be able to let people know whenever they are participating in the process and they open up the form, or even if they're not specifically participating in the process, but they want to open up the form just to see what's going on. I want to let them know what's going on with this form while the process is running. So they do need to know what the running activity name is. And for people who are actually being tasked with doing something while this activity is running, the actual task assignees are going to need to see the instructions for their task. So I've got two system variables that I want to show at the top of every form. And in fact, I've colored them this sort of dark red color to make it stand out a little bit at the top of the form when it opens. I want to throw in activity running name as one of my system variables. And of course, I want to throw in the task instructions as the other system variable. And I want this to be visible while the process timeline is running and I actually have activities going on. So let's change this to form is visible when, and instead of the new form instance, we'll just go to timeline and we'll say timeline status and we'll set this to equal active because the only time, and we'll also set it to otherwise hidden. The only time I need to see these two system variables are when the process timeline is running. That's the only time in which there is any context for there to be a running activity or instructions. So on a new form instance, don't need to see it because I'm submitting a new form instance. There's no timeline running. When the timeline is done, it's not running. Neither of these system variables will have any value. So I don't want to see it then either. So I really only want to show this section of the form while I'm actually running in a process timeline. Once that process timeline is completed, I don't want to see this. And obviously I don't want to see it before the process timeline begins. So this is very useful information to have while the process timeline is running, but not really, but there's no information to see at all if the timeline isn't running. So that's why they're hidden the way they are. The actual system variables themselves can be written a couple of ways. I don't necessarily have to throw in a embedded section the way that I have done. And the reason that I've thrown this in as an embedded section is because I have sort of explicit text here, which will be followed by this text whenever the form is created. So I'll just have this section that will just have this text at the very top of the form. There are alternative ways of doing this. So for example, in my system variable, I can just throw in something like a pre modifier. which will let me identify text that I want to display prior to the text of the system variable. So I can just say pre equals running activity. And if I do that and I throw the system variable at the top, if there is no value in the activity running name, which is to say, if I'm not actually running in any activity, then this system variable has no value. It returns nothing. And if it returns nothing, then this prepended text, I should probably put a sort of a colon in there or something to have a demarcation there. But this will not show up. Neither the system variable, since it won't have a value if I'm not running an activity, and since it doesn't have a value, none of my pretext will show up either. So this will just be blank on the form. So technically, I don't need to go this formal with it. I can actually do what I need to do inside the task instructions. So I could just drop both of these system variables here with the appropriate pretext. And if I do so, then they are not going to be visible if there is no value to show in that context. So in that case, I really don't need to encapsulate them if I do it that way inside an embedded section. You can do it either way that you want. There's no right or wrong way in terms of how you want that to work. I prefer to do it this way just to add what will eventually be a little paragraph at the top of the form. I also like to be able to, bold face my instructions and ensure that my I have the appropriate spacing after the colon. So there's a couple of reasons why I do it this way. It's a little more configuration. On the other hand, because it's in a template, I can do it exactly the way that I want to do it with the proper formatting that I want, especially if I wanted like a different color here to the actual color of the system variable. It just gives me a lot more options. And because I'm doing it in a template, I don't really care how it's done. I care that it is done because I'm going to want this stuff to show. But the actual method of doing it, whether I do it with, as I have done here, with a hidden embedded section, or whether I just use the system variables with pre and post and null modifiers for the activity system variable and the instruction system variable, it ends up the same. It will not show whenever it is not needed. So I've got that section at the top. I've also got some pre-configured values on the controls. I have my submitter, my submission date, and my request number. All of these are disabled. These are all automatically filled. If we go to the field properties, we can see that they have a default value set. So for my submitter, it is the form submit user. So when the form instance is created by whoever's going to submit it, it will fill out the form submitter with their name. It is a user picker control. So the presumption is that the person who submits this form will be a process director user. If you have forms that are going to be submitted by anonymous users, obviously you're going to have to get rid of this particular form field because it's not going to be valuable for you. But we're going to make the assumption that we are using process director users to submit our forms. So this is a good form field to have. The submission date, obviously we always want to know the date of our submission. This allows us to track, when it started, how long it's going, things like that. It also allows to search by date. A lot of the reasons why we're putting this stuff here is because it creates actual form field data that gets stored with the form. One of the important things that we're going to do over time, of course, is create knowledge views based on this form. Now, in a knowledge view, I can always use the system variable for form submit date. I can always use the system variable for submission date, or for, well, not for request number, but for these two fields, there are actually properties of the form that I could use. However, when I'm building a knowledge view and you're building columns in a knowledge view, form field is kind of the default value for new knowledge view columns. And if my knowledge view is associated with this form and I create a new column, it's already giving me, I believe, form field is my default. So all I have to do is just pick the form field from the dropdown. Otherwise, I have to go into the choose system dialog box and go to form, and then form submit user and form submit date, which is a perfectly valid way of doing it. But I am, as I've said many times, lazy. So I would just prefer to pick a form field. So having these two in the form field is important. I have a request number, as we've talked about, a lot, where I just want to generate a unique number for each request. We'll have to make this happen in our process timeline, but for the time being, my default value for this is just generated when submitted. So once I submit the form, it will give me a request number. We'll talk about that when we cover the process timeline. But I need those three fields, and I need these system variables at the top, and I need the look and feel that I want for the form. I've also put at the very bottom of the form, below my last section, which is where my actual request information is going to go. So our work is going to all be done in the request information and below it and above my button area on the form. I always put a button area on the form so that I can control where the buttons appear. This is not, strictly speaking, mandatory. If you do not have a button area control on a form, Process Director will automatically just stick it at the bottom of the form anyway. I don't want it at the bottom of the form because I have a routing slip on the form at the very bottom, and that's what I want at the very bottom. I don't want my users, if they don't care about the routing slip and they don't want to look at it and what have you, especially if it's a routing slip that may get long, I don't want them to have to scroll past the routing slip to get to the result buttons, which is what they will have to do if I don't specify a location for the result buttons. So I specified a location immediately above the routing slip. I've done that to ensure that my users can just go straight to the buttons and click them, and they don't have to go through the painfulness of scrolling through a routing slip. And look, I've seen people who have processes, and we routinely have people who have processes with 40 or 50 activities. It's a pain to have to scroll through the bottom of a big, long routing slip with 40 or 50 activities on it just to hit the OK button at the bottom. So that's why we've put a button area control here and the routing slip below it. So at BP Logix, we generally want the routing slip to be at the very, very bottom of the form. It's available. People can see it if they want to scroll down and scroll through it, but I'm not going to require people to scroll through it. If they just want to open the form, look at their stuff, and click OK or submit or approve or whatever the button is that they see at the bottom of the form, then we want them to do that without putting the additional burden of additional scrolling onto them. So I've got my buttons on my form, and I've got my routing slip, and this is everything that I need. I've got a fully functional form. This, by the way, is a fully functional form, and because it's tied to a timeline, I've got a fully functional timeline as well that's associated with this, and magic will happen if I open and submit this form already. Of course, we don't have the data that we need. We're not ready to submit the form. So now our job with actually designing the form begins. Like I said, we're going to create this form from scratch. So we're just going to pretend that this is a new application and we're starting de novo. So I'm going to call this the ADC request. I'll call it the ADC request form. So now it has a title at the top. I'm pretty happy with that. I've got this done. I've got my standard fields done. So now I've got to define the fields for my request. So the first thing I'm going to want is, because this is going to handle multiple types of requests, the first thing that I'm going to want is to put in some sort of control that will enable me to specify the request type that I want. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is, well, there's a couple of other things that I want here. I'm going to want at least one other field for my request information. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop in a table here. It's just going to be one row and two columns, and everything else will be fine. I'll just add that table in there. I have this extra space down here at the bottom now that I'm going to want to get rid of. So I'll just backspace my way out of that. Now I've got this little table and I can start putting in the form fields that I want. So as I said, we're going to be handling multiple types of requests. I need the user to be able to choose the type of request that they're going to be submitting. So I'm going to need some sort of request type field. So to build that field, I'm going to need to do two things now. First thing I'm going to need to do is go to Other Controls and go to Label Control. And I will call this type label. And I will set the text as request type. And I'll put a colon after that. And I'm going to set the associated control ID to request type. This request type field doesn't exist yet. It is about to. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that name. I'm putting a label control on here for accessibility purposes. If you'll notice up here, my request number, my submission date, my submitter, these are all labels, and they're all associated with specific controls on the form. So the submitter label is associated with the submitter control on a form. This is an accessibility convention. This enables users who are using assistive devices or who can't use a mouse or what have you, can actually go between fields much more easily by having these labels associated with specific fields. So I have a request type label. I'm going to enter a break control here by hitting Shift and Enter. So I just move to a new line, and I'm going to throw a drop down in here, and I am going to name this drop down request type. So because this dropdown is named request type, this label has associated control property ID of request type. This label is now permanently associated with this dropdown control. So if I were to even if I were just to click on the label, it would select the dropdown control. And it works for assistive devices without a mouse. Being able to go label to label will select the appropriate form field, set the focus to that form field, and enable the user to fill the form field out. Now I've got a little quandary here because, well, here, let's do another thing first. We have our drop-down control. We're going to have to come back to it. I do want to do a couple of things here. First thing I want to do is go into the cell properties for the cell. And I want to just give it a specific width. So we'll go to Cell and Cell Properties, and I'm going to set the width to, let's say 200 pixels. So this cell now has a fixed width of 200 pixels. I am not going to do that for this second column, this second table cell. I want the cell to just, adjust to whatever the screen size is that I use. And of course, in Process Director in a form, if it is shown on a very narrow viewpoint or viewport, we'll actually refactor the table so that it will just show in a single column rather than having two columns. But for other screen widths, I want this to be a variable width cell. So this cell will always be 200 pixels wide, but this cell will vary according to the screen width of whatever viewport you're using to view on it. I'm going to need another field here where I want to be able to store some sort of narrative or some sort of explanation of what the request is. So I'm going to call this field request info. And obviously it's going to need a label. So I'm going to go to other input control, other controls, pick a label control. And I'm just going to call it request info label. And I'm going to copy request info because I will use it later. We'll give it text of request information. And I'll put a colon there. And then our associated control ID will be request info. And I'm going to go hit control or hit shift enter to add a new line. And I'm going to drop in a text box, which I am going to name, obviously, request info, so that it is associated with that label. Now I got to figure out what I want to do with this text box. I'm going to want some information from the end user to explain what their request is and why I should care. So the standard text box is a little too small. I think I want that to be a little bigger. So let's set this, instead of hitting those up and down arrows, I'm just going to manually set this to 60. You know, maybe that's not even big enough. Now, this is where we got to be a little careful, because we do have to remember some people might be using their phone. It's generally not a super idea to use your phone to submit forms, but people do. So we have to be a little careful about this, because if you're going to hold your phone in portrait mode, it's going to be really narrow. So it's going to limit what my space is. If I was sure that everybody was going to look at this on a desktop, I might be tempted to move this over to 80, which I think will be fine because that gives me a lot of space over here. So I think on a desktop, it's going to be fine. I think on a tablet, it's probably going to be fine if I go to 80. 60 is probably a little safer, but I'm just going to go ahead and keep it at 80 at this point. We'll just assume that for the most part, people are going to be looking at this on the desktop. One line doesn't seem enough, so I'm going to add to the rows property. Let's give them 8 rows of text to fully explain themselves. And there might be something else that I want to do here, and this is all dependent on how much formatting you want. You want to just give them the ability to put in plain text. If you do, that's fine. I think I'm going to use the text editor just to show the text editor control, so that people can do whatever formatting they want. Now, because this is a input control, I can actually add empty text to it, especially if it's just an empty text box without the text editor. It's often useful to have the empty text property set so that people can see some sort of instruction. So please explain what the issue is that you'd like to be addressed. Now, the nice thing about empty text is that it disappears whenever you start putting in real text. So basically, it just gives people this sort of, and that's admittedly gray, it's admittedly hard to read, it's admittedly a violation of accessibility principles because the contrast ratio is so low. Yet, here we are. Again, this is an HTML convention. It is possible for you to customize CSS to make this different. I have not done so, but it does give me a nice little explanation about what we want to see in this particular control whenever the user fills it out. So the empty text allows you to provide essentially context-sensitive help on each control that you place on your form. Now, I do have a big problem with what I've done so far in terms of the look and feel. I'm not happy that this control here is in the middle and this control here fills up the entire vertical height now because I've made such a large control. I really do want this to be even with the top. Now, the reason that it's not is because of the default properties of cell alignment. I can fix that, of course. I can just highlight both of these cells, right-click on them, go to Cell and Cell Properties. And I have both horizontal and vertical alignment properties on my table. I think I want everything to show up at the top. So I'm just going to reset that so that now both of these show up at the top. And I think this, having them set right next to each other, both of them displaying at the top of the cell, gives me a much more attractive, visual form because everything is lined up. It just sort of offends me if things aren't lined up perfectly. That probably says more about me than it does about form design, but there you have it. All right, let's go back to this drop-down control because we have a decision to make. This drop-down control is going to store the different types of requests that we are going to allow people to make. Now, I've got a couple of different ways to configure the options for this particular dropdown. Normally, what we would do is use a drop-down list or a drop-down object, rather, to fill the items in this list. But this is one of those weird edge cases. I usually make a drop-down object, which, by the way, make no mistake, that's what we are going to do. But usually, when I create a drop-down object, my assumption is that it's going to be reusable. In other words, I'm going to need it somewhere else in some other application at some time. In this particular instance, I'm not sure that's true. This might be a valid use case for, rather than creating a drop-down object, which I am, make no mistake, going to use for this control, but I'm going to do it to illustrate the use of drop-down objects. But this is one of those cases where this request type is probably going to be unique to this form. I'm probably not going to need to reuse it anywhere else. So technically, I don't need a drop-down object for it. And this is the one acceptable use case. I have a unique drop-down control that will never be reused, that is only on this form, which means that I can, in fact, use the items property to set up my drop-down control. So I could actually create my options right here. So I can have an I can have an HR action. I can have a complaint. I can have time off. And I can have a suggestion. I have 4 items. And actually, well, let's replace that X with an S. And actually, I'm probably going to want values here. For something this short, it may not require values. I largely do it to show the fact that I can have separate values. I think in this case, while technically having a separate value and display text is common, not sure I need it in this particular case because I've only got these 4 things. But I mean, I could certainly do this here, and I don't think it would be a problem. One of the reasons why we don't generally want you to individually configure drop-down controls is because it just makes your life a lot harder, especially if you are going to be using the same drop-down options in multiple forms. So like you might have a list of states and provinces. You're definitely going to want to make a drop-down object out of that. You're not going to want to constantly copy and paste a list of states over and over again into a whole bunch of different forms. So that's it's a fixed static lists. The names of states and provinces don't change all that much. I'm looking at you, Canada. but they occasionally change, especially in Canada. So you might have to go in and change that list. And the nice thing about it is if you do have to change that list, you only have to change it in that one place. You have to change it in the drop-down object. In a case like this is probably going to work, and it's probably going to work fine. I think because this is such a short list, my initial inclination would be to just go ahead and drop it on the form because I don't expect it uh, to be replicated anywhere else. But this is kind of a one-off thing. So let's pretend that we might have different forms that address HR actions, complaint, time off, and suggestions. So let's assume that we are going to need it somewhere else. So I'm not going to configure this particular control here, but I am going to save and close my form, and I am going to have to create the drop-down object for it to supply the options for the drop-down control at runtime for my form. And as soon as this form saves, we will do that. All right, great. It's saved, and I don't know whether I hit save accidentally or whether I hit save and close. These little buttons are awfully close together. So let's hope this time it saves and closes. Great, it did. I'm going to have to go back to my content list here. I'm going to create a drop-down. And because I'm going to create a drop-down object, I've got a folder at the root of my partition called drop-down objects. Drop-down objects are global objects. They're fully reusable. They can be reused everywhere. They are not associated with any other specific object. So the best practice is to have a drop-down objects folder marked off with the square brackets on both sides so that I can store all of my drop-down objects there. So I've actually got some different objects already stored here. I'm just going to need to build a new one. And so I'm just going to go to new. It's in the D's for drop-down object. And I'm just going to call this the ADC drop-down. I don't even need to use the name drop-down here because it's a drop-down object. But in any event, that's what I'm going to call it, the ADC drop-down. And I'm just going to take and I'm going to paste my stuff into the text box view. But let's pretend that I did this on the table view and I clicked add drop-down entries and I made my drop-down entries. But the nice thing about it is I can just copy and paste stuff into the text view. And that's what I've done. Now, in most cases, you are going to want to have a separate value to a display text. Actually, it's not whether you want to or not. It's just how life is going to work. I don't think that is something that we necessarily want, other than I've got these as separate words: HR action, time off. I want them to be displayed like that. I might want a different value. Now, we're often we're often left with ID numbers as the values of a control or the values for an option. So, for example, if I'm going to fill a dropdown from a business value, generally I'm pulling it from a table with an ID primary key that uniquely identifies each item in the database table. And then I've got some text value that I'll set as the display text. So I generally set the ID field as the value and the display and whatever the name of the object is as the display text value. I've got a little more flexibility whenever I'm dealing with a drop-down object. We're so used to seeing numbers being set as the values because in many cases, the ID that is returned from a database when we're trying to fill a drop-down is literally an auto-numbered key. It's just an integer number from 1 to a very, very high number. I forget what it is off the top of my head. But we don't have to do it that way. We don't need to use numbers. We can actually use text as values in drop-down objects. So to make my life simpler here, I am just going to have H for HR actions, C for complaint, T for time off, and S for suggestions. So I will know what type of request I have based on that value. In fact, I could go a little further. I could call it HR complaint, PTO, and suggestion if I wanted to. You got a lot of freedom for how you want to set these values. Now, the nice thing about drop downs is that if I'm going to look at a drop down control in a knowledge view and it's going to return that value to me, it will by default show me the display text in the knowledge view, not the value. However, I am going to be making conditions that require me to evaluate this request type, and I'm going to have to do it fairly often. So I want to make my life as easy as possible whenever it comes to setting the value, because I'm going to have to use these values in a condition, or in actually an entire series of conditions. And so since I'm going to do that, I want to make this as simple as possible for me. So like I said, I have a lot of options here, and I'm just sort of trying to consider on the fly how I would want to do this. But I think I'm just going to go HR, C, PTO, and S. So that will give me my HR action, complaint, time off, and suggestion. So I'm going to go ahead and update and save this particular dropdown. By the way, I'm not sure I like this new icon, but this is now the default icon for drop-down controls, the little downward pointing caret. Not sure, but whether I didn't prefer that icon, but that's a design thing that we have no control over. So our preferences are what they are. So let's go back to our ADC form now that we have our drop-down object. And we can, well, let's not forget, I was about to go to the design tab, and hey, let's not forget there's a form controls tab. So I can always go into the form controls tab, and I can go to request type here, which is this drop down, and I can double click on this to open up its field properties. And when I do, I can set my link to drop down object, which is up here in my drop down objects. It's called ADC drop down. There we go. That links my drop down object to my control. There's something else we need to do here, but let's concentrate on taking a look at how this drop down is working for us right now. So currently, hey, we're doing fine. HR action, complaint, time off, and suggestion. So I'm happy with what's going on here on this form. Now, there's one thing I did want to tell you. I think I mentioned it previously. Let's look here. We don't see anything. The reason we don't see anything, and let's go back over, well, we have to go back in the design view of our form. So let me update. Let's go back to the online form designer. Let's go back to this control here, and let us turn off use text editor and allow spell check. And let's run our form again. Well, taking its own sweet time to run, huh? There we go. Well, I've clicked into it, which ruins it. Please explain what the issue is you'd like to be addressed. So something that happens, let's check this out. I can also change the size of my text field on the form. That's just a cool UI thing. You should know that this is available to you for multi-line text boxes. I am seeing my empty text here. And when I click into it, the empty text disappears and allows me to fill out whatever value I need to fill out. But if we come back over here and we turn on use text editor, and well, a couple of things happen, one of which should give you a clue what's going on. Notice that my input mask property, once I say use text editor, my input mask property just goes disabled instantly. So I have no input mask that I can use on this field anymore. And the reason is because I've now set this field to use a rich text editor. I've apparently clicked out of it. So this field is now set to use the text editor. So let's run the form again. And once again, painfully slow, but it is chugging away. And there we go. There's my form. Now I've got my text editor. What I don't have is empty text. It's because I'm not looking at a text box anymore. It has a completely different set of properties. I'm now looking at a third-party control called CK Editor. This allows me to do full formatting on anything that I type in here for my text. So I can do all of the cool stuff for each of the fields, whatever it is that I want to do, it's all available to me. And this field will get stored as raw HTML. What's happening here is I'm applying various types of HTML formatting to this particular text, which means that all of these are HTML style commands that are being saved. And we're going to save this raw HTML as the value of this field. So keep in mind, using the rich text control does a couple of things. It takes away a couple of the normal features that are available for an input box, and it replaces it with a control that is basically storing raw HTML. Now, I'm seeing this as formatted text, but that's because this little window here is a tiny little browser window that is converting HTML markup text to a web page that is showing in this control, and it's going to save the raw HTML. This is going to cause you a problem later if you want to use, say, a system variable to return the value of this field, because the value that's going to get returned is the raw HTML that gets stored to allow this to be strike through, this to be purple, bold, underlined, subscript, whatever. So if there are any plans for just being able to pull the value of this field via system variable, you're going to get HTML. You're going to get plain raw HTML because that's how this data is stored. By the way, this is how the product worked with the previous iteration of this control, which was the rich text editor. It also stores just the plain raw HTML. It's just an uglier version of the CK editor. It's basically styled in the late 90s, early 2000s, and this looks like it was styled more recently. But other than that, we're still storing HTML. So using the text editor, cool, gives your people some options, but as administrator, it's going to constrain some of your options later whenever you might want to pull these values out and display them. Just keep in mind that you are storing, when you use the rich text editor, raw HTML. I think in my case, I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off. And the allow spell check, this is still here. We can't really take it out because of legacy purposes, but in general, your browser is going to control your spell checking now. Spell checking is kind of just built into the browser. I actually have a plugin. I don't run it on Process Director sites because I'm doing admin stuff for the most part, but I have a tool called Language Tool, which here, now you can see it. I have this tool called Language Tool. Like I said, I disable it on BP Logic sites because of what I do, and it gets in my way more often than not. However, most of your users probably have something like this. There's Language Tool. There's also one other, I forget what it is, but there's all sorts of spelling and grammar tools that are available in browsers now. So having to build in a spell check is just something we don't worry about anymore. But it's nice to be able to have that, to be able to check your spelling and grammar inside Process Director. So this allows spell check, not really all of that relevant in the modern era, but of course for older systems, well, actually, even for older systems, it's not. The fact is, it was necessary at one time. It's no longer necessary, but because we have so many people who, have this, well, we can't really take it out now. But largely, your browser is taking over the spell check thing. But I'm going to go ahead and turn off the use text editor because, well, I'm not going to use an input mask, but I am going to want to show the empty text. So I'm going to leave that in there. And because I am doing that, maybe this doesn't have to be quite this big. I kind of made it, 80 and 8. It's kind of big. Let's take this down to 60 and 6. Let's make it just a little more compact. Because if it's just going to be plain text, I'm not sure, how much space you're actually going to need. But now that it's a plain text control, it will just store the plain text. So if we make a reference to this via system variable, it'll just reference our plain text. Oh, great. We've got our initial fields. Now we've got to figure out what we're going to do on this form if there are different request types, because each request type is going to require its own specific information that is relevant only to that request type, right? So I'm going to want to add some extra space down here because I'm going to want to throw in another couple of sections. I'm using a section control because I want to be able to show and hide the entire section at one time. And I'm going to need a couple of different section controls. I'm going to need a section control for what happens if I am requesting time off, one for a complaint, one for HR action, and one for a suggestion. So it doesn't really matter what order in which we place these. So I'm just going to put them sort of in random order. I'm going to create a section that is called I'll just call it section time off. And I'm going to put some text in so that I can tell what I'm doing whenever it comes to edit it. We'll just call this PTO request. We'll call it PTO dates. Why don't we call it that? So there's my time off section. And then I'm going to create another section, which we'll call section HR. We'll say requested HR actions as the text. And we'll have to go down another line. I'm going to need 2 more of these. So I might as well just put 2 more, might as well just hit enter 2 more times. And we'll drop in a third section, which we'll call section complaint. And we'll call it complaint details. I'm not sure how many details we're going to have, but we'll call it complaint details for the text. And then I'm going to need one final section. Actually, I'm going to need at least 2 more sections, but I'm trying to figure out what all needs to go on this form. So I have HR suggestion. That's my next one. So we'll put one called section suggestion. And for its text be suggestion details. There are a couple of more that I'm going to need, but we'll halt for now. I'm going to need one for my journal controls, and I'm going to need one for approvals so that I have some approval information that I'm going to collect. But let's finish the request right now. So I've got these 4 sections. Now I only want to see each individual section whenever the request type is the appropriate type. So I got to do, so I'm going to need to implement a visibility scenario here. So I'm going to have this happen whenever I change the request type. When I change the request type, I want to see just the information that is relevant to that specific request. So I'm going to go to the field properties for the request type, and I am going to make it an event field. Because it's an event field, there's something else that I'm going to want to do, which we'll talk about in just a second. Because it's going to change the way that my form works. So anytime that we create an event field, we're going to want to create a set focus custom task, but we'll come back and do that a little bit later. For right now, let's figure out when each of these different things are going to show. So if it's PTO dates, then I am going to need to set a visibility condition. So I'm going to go to set display options. I'm going to set field is visible when, and I'm going to click to create a condition. And the condition I'm going to add is whenever the request type equals, and I kind of elided past this real quick, didn't I? It was originally set to string. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. Now, here's the cool thing, because I'm using a drop-down control, and that drop-down control now has, options supplied to it. Process Director knows that request type is a drop-down control. Back in the oldie times, string was the proper response here. And I would actually have to type in, whatever the matching value was, or I'd have to use contains to have sort of a fuzzy logic on it. I no longer have to do that because this is a drop-down control. And all my drop-down values exist here. And so in this particular case, and this says section 18, not happy with that. Could be because I haven't saved it. We'll have to go back and check to be sure I've renamed this section properly. This is the time off section, I believe. So I'm going to pick time off as my drop-down value. And so this is going to be visible when the request type equals, and notice it shows me my actual value here. When we were in the choose system variable dialog box, it was showing me my display text, which is time off. But when we save the condition, it's actually saving it with the value of the control that I'm looking for, which is PTO. The dropdown kind of makes things a lot simpler for you. It handles this difference between display text and values in the background so that you don't have to worry about it. So now this should only show up when I select PTO. Otherwise, it will be hidden. And this section control is section time off. So the name has not been set in stone. I'm just going to go ahead and do a progress save here real quick to be sure that all of my control names are properly saved to the form definition, which, by the way, you should also do on a routine basis. And once my save is over, I'm going to go back to my other 3 sections, and I'm going to set them as well. So I have my HR section. I did put in requested text for that object, copy. Okay, not sure. Requested HR options. Oh, now I don't know what happened. Okay, well, now we're back to normal. I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but we'll go to our field properties here. And once again, we'll want this as field is visible when, and we will create our condition for our dropdown. So that is request type equals, and again, we're going to go to dropdown and we'll pick HR action and okay there. So request type HR. And once again, we'll click the otherwise hidden. And we can go to complaint details, do the same thing. Field is visible when. Request type. And this is complaint, I believe. And the bottom one is suggestion details. Well, I'm having trouble clicking on the control. And one final field is visible when. Condition to configure. Suggestion is the appropriate answer here, and otherwise hidden. All right. Well, I want to test this now because I want to be sure that my my form is working as expected. So I'm just going to hit update and, well, I meant to hit update and test, but it looks like I hit update and run based on my mouse position. No matter. We just want to see that my request type dropdown works properly. PTO dates and complaint details. I shouldn't be seeing those. So what have I done wrong? Field properties. Okay. I'm not sure what happened. I thought I had configured these. I think I lost something somewhere. Although this does say section time off now, not section 18, which I noticed earlier. So I set the wrong field. Drop down, time off. There we go. And which was the other one that was messed up? Request type HR. Otherwise hidden. There we go. That should be turned on. And it should be turned. Okay, great. So now let's update and run our form again. So what I'm looking to see is just the request information section visible on the form. I don't want to see any of these yet. I'm going to show these based on changes that I make to the request type field. So I'm just testing my visibility scenarios. And I'm doing it before I start throwing in a whole bunch of fields. This is fine. It just allows me to get these visibility scenarios configured and out of the way before I move in and actually start building the values that I want in these fields. I've still got PTO dates showing. Why is that? Field properties. Otherwise hidden. Why is that turning off? This is really becoming quite tedious, which, I think quite tedious is usually a very good explanation for testing, visibility and enabling scenarios like this. It does tend to be a little tedious setting this up. That's what I'm expecting to see, though. So even though it took me a bit to do it, I at least got my initial view right. So we go to HR action, requested HR options, complaint details, time off gives me PTO dates, suggestion gives me suggestion details. And should I go back and hit select one here, it should show me nothing. So great. Took me a while, but I got my visibility stuff working properly so that based on the request that I choose, I'm going to see different information that is available to me to fill out on the form once I throw those appropriate fields in the form. Now, because I have set request type as a event field, a couple of things are going to happen that one thing is going to happen that I don't particularly like and that I need to fix, which is what happens when I change the value of request type. I am going to need to ensure that my focus, once I change that, goes to request information properly. So right now, in my form, if I type through and I pick complaint, oh, it did tab me to where I wanted to go. Most likely because this is the first control on the form. So this is where it's gonna take me on reload. But normally that doesn't happen. So normally we can't do that sort of thing whenever we set the focus. This is especially true for arrays and stuff like that. Whenever I hit complaint, it's hard to see it because it happens so fast, but my form is actually reloading. And so what I want to ensure, which it doesn't look like I necessarily need to do it here because it happens to be the very first control on the form. So when the form reloads, it's going to go back here. So when I hit tab, it takes me to the next control. So this is not the greatest illustration of the problem because in this specific case, the problem doesn't occur, but in almost any other case, the problem would occur. The form is reloading. And when the form reloads, it's going to reset the tab order and it's going to go back to the first control on the form, which in this case happens to be the suggestion dropdown, which means that in this particular case, I can ignore this problem. But if this control was in any other position on the form, I couldn't ignore it because what would happen is when I changed the value of this control and my form reloaded, and the form, of course, has to reload because I'm showing a different section every time I pick something. When that form reloads, it's going to reset to the very first control on the form. And in most cases, that's going to be an issue that we're going to need to address. So in most cases, what we would have to do at this point is we'd have to save and close this form, and we'd have to run over to the custom task event mapping tab of the form definition, because that's the only place where we configure the set focus custom task. Because what I want to do whenever I change whenever I change the value of an event form and the event form fires, I do need to change the set focus so that when the form reloads and it moves back up to the very first control in the form, I want to change the focus from that first control to whatever form control comes after the control that fired the event. That way it allows me to keep my tab order where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to select custom task and we're going to go to form and we're going to go to set focus as my custom task. We are going to add it. The event that we are going to pick is the request type event, because this is the event that's going to reload the form. And on my configuration tab, it's very simple. I just need to select the control to which I want the focus set after the form reloads. So basically, I want to keep my tab order set properly so that I can fill out my field, especially if you're a keyboard form filler. You enter the value in a field and then you hit tab to leave the field and move to the next field. So I want to set this to the request info field, I believe. And that will set my focus to the request info field whenever I tab through request type. So if I go to update and run, I should now be able to select time off. And notice when I changed the value, well, I didn't change the value. When I changed the value, it moved me straight to the request information field. So it actually basically allowed me to tab out of it myself. And when I hit tab, you can't see me hitting tab, but I'm hitting tab. And when I hit tab, it just moved me directly to the next field, which is my request information field. And I can make the changes that I need to make to that field automatically. So great. That fixes that problem. We're good to go. So now I'm going to need the information that I need to make my form work. So we're going to go back to the design view of the form. And we're going to need to fill out some stuff on the PTO dates and what have you. I don't think the fields that I place here matter. So I'm not, in the time that is remaining to us, going to spend 30 minutes of you watching me create a start and end date and a couple of other fields here. So I think we're just going to, I'm going to do that between this week and next week. I'll actually supply because each one of these is only going to have like 1 or 2 form fields in it. You don't need to sit here and watch me do that. But I do have some other sections that I want to add that are going to have some different visibility conditions associated with them. And so let me add those here. So the first is my journal control. And I'm actually going to put in 2 journal controls into this form. So I'm going to set up another section, and I'm going to call it section journal. And I'm going to call it comments and milestones. Comments and milestones. And I'm going to throw in 2 journal controls in this section here. So let's go to other input controls. We'll go to this first journal control, and we will set its width to be 100%. Where's my percent key? 100%. And we'll set the height as, let's not make it too high. We'll just set it as 400. And we're going to keep allow view user comments. We are not going to choose any milestone groups. We are going to name it comment log. And then right below it, I'm going to add another journal control. And this journal control, I'm going to call milestones. And I'm going to turn off allow view user comments. And I am going to have to set some milestone groups. I don't have any milestone groups set yet. For my journal controls, I will. And when I do, we'll have to come back and reconfigure this. But I want a couple of journal controls on this particular form. I think I missed something here. I missed setting the titles on these because I don't want them both to just say journal. So I'm going to call one comment threads, and the other one I will simply call milestones because that's what we're going to show. Milestones have a particular use. I'm calling them milestones because I'm not creative enough to think of a cool name. But you know, you might call it something simple that your end users, because they're not going to know what milestones are for the most part. So maybe process notifications. Maybe that's even better. It's so nice and generic. So I've got comment threads and I've got process notifications. So that makes me happy as far as that goes. I'm going to need another section, and this is going to be where the approvals are conducted. And so I am going to have to show a special section to all of my approvers, and we'll have to work out some probably more complicated things there. Oh, I forgot one thing. I didn't set that control to 100%. So let me go ahead and do a quick resave. Also, a quick check of time. It's 11:38. Now, the reason why we're putting these two journal controls on here, obviously to allow people to make comments as it goes through the process, to be able to ask questions, get responses. The other reason is because we are going to want to track certain things that happen and show the important milestones in this project. And we're also going to want to show something else that's very important, whether one of our approvers decided to go in behind us and edit our request. So we are going to need an approver section, which we'll call section approver. And I'm going to need a couple of things here. First thing I'm going to put in is a checkbox control. So we're going to create a checkbox, and we're going to call it edit checkbox. And we're going to give it the text, make this form editable. And we're also going to have to be sure that we set this as an event field, because we're going to need to evaluate this to determine whether this form was made editable. And then we're going to go down to the next line, and we are going to add in a signature comments control. And this is where the signature comments that our approvers are going to make whenever they approve our particular activities. So I'm just going to call this approval comments. And I think that'll be fine. I need these because I'm gonna do a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to require some comments on some process timeline activities based on what is going on or based on whether the approver approves or disapproves of the request. I'm going to want to require comments. I'm going to do that in the process timeline on the results tab of the user activities. And the other thing is, obviously, I'm going to want to have these signature comments because they are going to be stored down here at the bottom in the routing slip so that they are visible to everybody when the form is submitted and as it moves through the process. So I've got two things that I'm doing here. I'm going to give my approvers the ability to make this form editable, and I'm also going to collect their signature comments when they approve or disapprove. I need to fully configure this. So let's set the text to approver actions. Wow. Ooh, certainly didn't want to hit F12, did I? Oh no. What have I done? Oh no, 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 no. And this is how you lose progress on your form. And we really need to do this because I wanted to cover this today. So I'm going to have to rebuild this. Section approver action. So I'm going to stop talking to you. I'm just going to do this and get this done. Exactly the opposite. All right, let's save this. And I'm going to do a couple of different things here on how I want this to show up. Note that my comments thread will accept comments, so that's great. My process notifications will not accept comments. My signature comments is not visible because I'm on a new form instance. I actually shouldn't be seeing comments and milestones and approver actions yet, so I shouldn't even be seeing these. I'm going to have to set up visibility conditions here, but I do have this make this form editable checkbox, which I did not make let me move this out of the way. I did not make that an event field. So let me go back and click on that, go to field properties and make it an event field. And let's set up some conditions. So for this section here, comments and milestones. Visibility on this going to be super simple. I am going to go to the field properties and I'm going to say field is visible when, and I do actually want to show both as I go through the process and after the process is over, what happened for both of these journal controls. I just don't want to see them on a new form instance. So I'm going to click the otherwise hidden checkbox. I'm going to add a very simple condition to form and new form instance equals no. So I want this visible when it is not a new form instance. Otherwise, I want it hidden. So whenever I first try to submit the form, let me save it here. So when I first try to submit the form, I don't want to see that at the top. So let me refresh to see if it saves it, see whether the save works before it refreshes. So I want to get rid of those comments and process notifications. Okay, great. They are gone now. Perfect. That's what I want. And then here, the approver actions. Well, this really is only something that I don't know what I've done. Okay, whatever it was, that was scary. The approver actions, I'm going to need something a little different here. This only really makes sense in the context of a running process timeline. So again, I am going to set visibility here. So field is visible when, and again, I'm going to put otherwise hidden as my checkbox, but I am going to go and I'm going to set this to process timeline and timeline status when it is active. So this will only appear when I am running in the process timeline itself. So what should happen is I will have, as an end user, I will open the form. I will see, well, let's save it while we're here. So as an end user, I should be able to open this form. So if I refresh this, it should, well, I may have to wait until that happens. There we go. Let's try refresh again. So there we go. As an end user, what I should see is this select one here under my request type. If I hit complaint, I should then see complaint details. I obviously can put in whatever I need to put in there. When I submit it, and happily all of the activities in the process timeline, which we haven't even talked about yet, but those are all assigned to me. So the next activity that appears should be assigned to me. So my form should reload, which is what it looks like is happening. It's just taking a while to do so. And when it does, I should see my comment threads there, and I should see my approver actions. Now I have approver actions. There we go. And make this form editable is turned off. So I've got a couple of other things that I need to do, because now that I've submitted the form, while it looks great, this form is all disabled. So I have to defeat these disabling conditions that I put at the form level itself when I created the form. So I'm going to need some more conditions set up on these two items. I don't know why it is doing that. So you know what we're going to do? Wait, where am I in this process? Okay, let's get rid of archive. That's just making things super confusing for me. In fact, let's get rid of my system folders. There we go. Let's just go to the ADC form. I just want to go back to whatever save state it was in without me mousing around here and messing things up. I must enter text comments and milestones. That text already exists. Okay, I'm not sure why that's happening, and I'm pretty sure I don't like it, but at least it's easily fixable. I'm going to save again, just to be sure that that gets saved. So everything is disabled, which means if I go to comment threads, which is the only thing that I could actually edit on this form as an end user, note I don't have a send button down here. And that tells me that this is disabled. And of course, my checkbox here is not editable. So that tells me that that is disabled as well. So I've got to handle the enabling scenarios on these particular controls. And one of the reasons why everything is in a section is so that I can enable and disable everything all at the same time. So I do need to go to the set read-only options. I need to go field is enabled when. This is a little more complex. When do I want this field to be editable? Well, it's not going to be displayed when it's a new form instance, but it will be displayed at all other times. Do I want people to edit this after the fact? Well, once the process is over, they won't be able to edit it at all. So I guess the only time that I need, but I don't want to make it permanently enabled because I don't want people to edit it after the process is over. So we're going to set this to otherwise disabled, but we are going to keep it enabled while we're actually inside the running process timeline. So we will go back to timeline and timeline status equals active. So this will be enabled when timeline status equals active. And down here at the bottom, we are going to do the same thing with this because again, this is only really going to be relevant while I'm running in a process timeline. So I do want to go with field is enabled there and nope, field is enabled when there. And my condition once again will be when I'm actively running in a process timeline. Timeline, there it is. Timeline status equals active. Okay, great. So now did I close my running form? It looks like I did. All right, so let us save and run the form again. And let's test our enabling conditions real quick, just to be sure that everything works when the form is enabled. And it is 11:52, so I am going to have to shut up very soon. So we know this works. Time off. I should see the time off section. Great. We'll hit submit. And now I've got comment threads. Well, what do you know? I can add comments to my journal control. That's editable. We have this process notification here. I've got a checkbox that works, which we are going to have to configure. And I've got my buttons to approve, resubmit, or deny. So that's all great. These are all pre-configured on my process timeline. So everything is working the way that I want it to work in terms of visibility and enabling. I do want to make this checkbox do something. So I do actually want to have a milestone, and I do want to get this milestone up and running before we go. So let's make that happen real quick. So we are going to go back to the form definition, and we are going to go to the milestones tab. And I'm going to add a trigger. So the trigger is going to be form event, and I'm going to create a condition. The form event is actually going to be the checkbox. So we're going to set it to the form event, and we're going to pick our make editable checkbox as our form field event. So when a form event fires and the form event name is make editable, we're going to create a milestone group. So I'm going to call this milestone group ADC 24. I'm going to milestone name made editable. Once again, I keep hitting F12. Oh, come on. Okay, I don't know why F12 is messing up. I don't know why F12 is messing up everything. I've never seen that before, but apparently it's easy to get past. So we're going to change the icon real quick. I'm going to pick a nice red color. I think I want a little darker red for accessibility purposes. So we'll make it red. And there's a pencil. That's good enough. And the journal entry is this form was made editable by, I think her user works good enough here. Her user on, and then cur, we'll go date time. Because I think I will be the current user when I click the checkbox. It will save my name as the milestone text. And once the milestone text is there, it's set in stone. So what I want to do is if somebody makes the form editable, I want to know that it was made editable. And what I needed to do was create a milestone to account for that. So I now have a form event. It's the make editable form event name. I'm going to update my form. I am going to, since it is 11:56, quickly go back to my form definition, and we are going to hope that this works. I should be able to click it and it should show up in my notifications. So we're going to go ahead and run the form. Obviously, I'm going to have to submit the form because this is not going to be visible afterwards. And by the way, if this doesn't work in the first time, I don't have time to troubleshoot it, so I'll have to fix it before next week. But hopefully it'll just work right out of the box. We'll see whether I, under the pressure of time, have managed to configure it appropriately. Let's make this form editable. I did not configure it appropriately, so I am going to have to go back and reconfigure that. What is going to happen next week when we show up first thing, because I've made the milestone is that I'm going to click make this form editable. No, I know why it didn't work, because I didn't configure it properly. I forgot one thing: process notifications, choose milestone groups. I have a new milestone group that I just created, ADC 24. My milestone group has to be associated with the journal control for it to be able to show me the milestone. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to save it. It's 11:57. I've got to get you out of here in 3 minutes. Come on, save, 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 save. It has saved. It's also opened a new form. Don't know why. Let's refresh this one. There we go. It was saving my milestones as I was clicking and unclicking the form. And it tells me that the form was made editable. It keeps telling me that every time I clicked on it. All I had to do was set the process notification. Now, this is not quite correct, because I only want this to occur when the form is made editable. So I only want it to occur when the checkbox value is true. So I'm going to need to tweak that condition a little bit more, but this is what I expected to see largely. Now it's just a case of fixing this particular milestone. But I did want to get a milestone working so that we could see milestones. We did see milestones, so I accomplished that. We are almost done with the form. Most of what has to be done will be done very quickly next week, and then we'll move into the process timeline and do the more complex stuff that's going to need to be done to make this timeline work the way that we want it with multiple requests. In the meantime, I'm out of time. It's 11:59. You have a great week. We will talk to you again next week. Until then, so long.